Today we're hopping in on creating messaging for your copy. And I will say, I'm pretty good at copywriting, but I'm not the best at NerdWise. I think Coop is significantly better. So I brought in our co-founder, Michael Coop, to help with this. And as other folks are joining the webinar, we'll get started here in a moment. But Coop, any words to share while people are still joining?
So it's just really nice to be here. As Max mentioned, it's hard to be an expert in copywriting for B2B. There's a lot of ways you can approach that type of project, and we're going to be here to try to guide your hand through the way. But there's not a one size fits all. There's not a golden bullet. And if there's something I would say, less is more. And when in doubt, test, test, test.
I love it. I love it. Well, we've got some really helpful points to kind of go through with that on this call. So it should help you in building out how you test these things out and write your copy. So I think we've got the majority of the folks who are going to be joining here today. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen and we will get started. So we're going to talk about most of these items here throughout this conversation, focusing largely on point number 2, key elements to effective messaging, and really going to walk you through more of kind of the process that I picked up from April Dunford. If you want a link to that book, we can hook you up with that as well. Going to talk on some touch points and timing, messaging optimization, measuring success with data, and then answer any questions. If this sounds good to you all, would you mind just typing yes in the chat? And if you have any questions before we get started, post them there as well. But yeah, if you're ready, go ahead and type in yes in the chat.
Yeah. And Max, to piggyback off what you were saying, what we know, because we've done this for a handful of years and we've had these types of webinars, this is a new series, but we've done this in the past, is your participation engagement makes this really magical. It's what's going to make it valuable. You have different experiences than us. And when it even comes to the messaging portion, if you want to make yourself available, not that you have to share your screen or anything, but if you want to share maybe some sample messaging that you've used that's worked really well, or sample messaging that you're not sure of, or if you've tried it, it's really hasn't performed that well, try to gather that and we can review it in real time. Again, it can be challenging to do that on the fly, but we can give you some key bullet points and frameworks for how to potentially improve something. Or at the same time, if you had a lot of success, maybe we can learn all from you too. So my biggest ask is participate, engage, and if you have questions, ask them. And if you physically have a real draft of messaging that you want, even if it's one email or it's a series of 4, try to gather it while we're here together on the line today. And even if we can't get to it on the call, we can always get back to you through either LinkedIn or email. And we promise to try to help you out as best as we can.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, so just some quick introductions. My name is Max Herman. I lead all things sales here and help with some client strategy pieces internally. And outside of work, I'm a father of 1. I'm married. And I live in Philly. It's a little cold here today. I'm from Florida. It's like 60 degrees. It's not really that cold, but I'm a baby about it, so I've got my jacket on. But yeah, Coop, if you want to share.
Yeah, so my name is Michael Coop, but everyone, including my parents, calls me Coop because I was raised with a lot of different Michaels as friends in my network. Been building NerdWise alongside Max and others on the team for about 8 years. We've got a lot of great problems, but we also have plenty of room to grow. On a personal note, I am a first-time father. My first child was born on St. Patty's Day. So my wife and I are getting used to those good uphill challenges, but we're facing them head on, and all is really well with our daughter, Charlie. And something else, I love to snowboard. I love adventure, love travel. And I don't know if a lot of that is in my future in the next 6 months or so, but I aspire to get back there and include, Charlie along that journey with us. So that's a little bit about the business and about me. And Max, we can take it on.
Great. So quick overview of NerdWise again. If you haven't seen this so far, I'm going to walk you through that real fast. If you have, I am sorry in advance. We've gone through this each week in this series, but this is about what the typical lead generation process looks like. Before I worked at NerdWise, when I was an SDR early in my career, it felt a lot like this, pushing the boulder up the hill. And I can speak from personal experience, where you're looking up each prospect one at a time, manually doing outreach, finding their phone number, calling them, finding their email, emailing them, finding them on LinkedIn, and so forth. seeing if there's any interest. You're probably not hearing anything back. Unqualified follow-up. Hey, I talked to your admin, I talked to someone else on your team, would love to know if there is any interest. And there might not be, but you don't know, right? And all this results in poor conversion rates again and again and again. And it is arduous. It's really hard. You feel every bit of rejection in that process, and it's kind of disjointed and takes a while. And there's a reason people hire young talent for this, is because a lot of folks don't want to have to go through this themselves, or they know that there's a better way, but haven't found it out yet. And so what we do is we've streamlined that. There's 5 big rocks that we see in light of this. First step is like defining a really specific go-to-market strategy where we know exactly who we're going after and how we're going to go after them, right? So we define the ideal customer profile and what value props we're going to share with them. That's the meat of what we're going to talk about today, is how we actually draft that messaging. And then we're going to run automated outreach, right? So this is going to be automated campaigns that are sequenced out in advance. And you can A/B test this as you see fit with different CTAs, different value props, and so on. But you're automating all of that outreach. And then you need some lead scoring. We provide all this again for our clients so they can see who's showing the most interest throughout the campaign and do additional follow through. But that lead scoring data, like if you don't have data backing up how you are running your outreach, it's really hard to know what's working and what's not. This all allows for targeted follow through on the top engaged prospects, resulting in much higher conversion rates, obviously filling the pipeline, right? And so this is what we run for our clients. And if you want to discuss that, we'd be happy to do that for you. Or even if we can help on a one-off, we'd be happy to have that conversation. But yeah, that's kind of overview on us at NerdWise and what Coop has been leading the charge on for so long. Moving on to kind of key elements to effective messaging, kind of the meat of our conversation. 5 key points. We're going to talk tone, we're going to talk audience, we'll talk outcomes, credibility, and CTAs. I really thought hard about creating an acronym for this, but I've spared you. No acronyms today, except for one. CTA, call to action, right? We'll talk about CTAs a lot. In any case, let's talk tone. And Coop, please interrupt me at any point if you have additional color you want to add to this. I fully expect you to interrupt me. And obviously, everyone else that's here, if you have questions about tone, credibility, etc., go ahead and throw them in the chat. We'll address them as they come. So as you're writing out your email, it might be simple to think about, okay, I'm emailing 500 people. I need to address the audience, right? But we try to write our emails in such a way where it feels like, hey, Coop, was interested in what you were working on. Would love to connect with you personally. Me and my team are working on X. Things like that are much more personal. It feels like I wanted to reach out to Coop and Coop only. And so the analogy I use for that is like, imagine if you got a handwritten note or a flyer in the mail. Which are you much more likely to act on? Which is much more meaningful to you? So the way you write this in first person and the way you like writing as you speak really help makes a difference, right? Make the difference. And then obviously go ahead and read that thing back to yourself. I have several different people look at emails before I send them, even if it's just to one person, because I know I'm missing something every time. Coop, any thoughts there?
Yeah, and something that's another key factor is the goal of email prospecting at this type of outreach in an automated fashion. A lot of folks come to us thinking they're going to close a deal because of the email, or they're going to sell their product because they sent an email. And the relationship actually is just beginning. And the ultimate goal that we're trying to achieve is there enough alignment and compelling outcomes and interests to want to have a handshake, to have coffee for 5 minutes? And granted, you might not be able to do that in person. You'll probably do that virtually in many instances. But the goal of these prospecting cadences, eventually, yes, it will lead to a sale, but the sale is not going to be done in the email. The sale will be handled through a demo discussion, a discovery call, an onboarding, whatever it is. The goal of prospecting in this manner, just like if you were cold calling, is trying to set qualified meetings and wean out the people that are not interested or are just going to say no. It's really important that You could do this a manual way by cold calling 300 people in a day, a week, whatever it is. But we're able to clearly identify out of 300 people we prospect who may be the top 10% you should be following up with, even if they haven't engaged you with a response. So there's a couple things where, again, key point, we're trying to handshake and have an introduction. And then ultimately the way we make this scalable and more efficient is we can identify the people we've gone after and saying, these are the top 10% that you should really spend time on, even though they haven't physically responded to you. They've engaged at such a high level in a serial way that it's meaningful to do some targeted follow through. So I probably got ahead of myself a little bit on that follow through piece. But again, the overarching goal is really hard to sell something in a B2B space. This is not e-commerce driven. We're not sending people to buy a product. We're trying to establish a relationship and understanding, are we worth their time to have a 5 to 10 minute call, maybe sometime later that week or later that month, whatever it might be.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. So yeah, think about writing it in a personalized way without trying to sell anything. All we're looking for, like Coop's saying, just a connection, right? From there, I think this is one of the biggest lessons I've learned here, especially when I first came on board, is like, who is my audience and how can I understand them? That was always a really large mental hurdle for me. And to try and put myself in our clients' buyer's shoes, like it's like several layers removed, but once you can kind of understand, like if you, especially if you are a sales rep or sales leader or CEO on this call, you know your audience and like what they love, like the things that they say over and over again, like, oh gosh, I'm so glad that we're working together. You guys are fixing XYZ, or I love the way that your team does ABC and so forth. Those things are going to be points into, or viewpoints into, what your ideal customer is going to care about down the road. And then the way that you address them matters, right? So I think this point down here is really good. Like, so for example, I get cold emails and I love to judge them or reply with feedback to people when I get them throughout the day. But if you go to our LinkedIn, NerdWise is considered like a internet company or something like that. And it's like we're in the world of like market. We're crossing between like marketing, sales automation, and SaaS. I don't know that LinkedIn has a line for that. And so people will cold email, they'll just like pull the industry field and say business and technology companies like NerdWise. And it's like, okay, come on. But if you are a bit more thoughtful on the front end and say, SaaS companies or consulting firms, or to this point, law firms instead of legal companies, or like healthcare providers, whatever like really specific niche you can do in segmenting it, it's going to feel a bit more personalized, right? And we want all this to be focused on them, not yourself. So for example, here's how long we've been in business. Here's what we do. Here's, all these things about us, me. Instead, it can be, here's how we're helping clients like A, B, and C accomplish these strategic initiatives. We're known for doing A, B, and C for these clients. And so it's less on your services and more on the outcomes of your service, right? And we'll cover this more in the next piece here. So aspirational outcomes. If you have any case studies whatsoever, those are the aspirational outcomes. So for us, we have like Link Capital Markets was a client we did a case study with. We generated 90 meetings for them in 30 days. Or a private equity firm. We filled, I think it's 17.1 million in pipeline in 90 days. Those are outcomes. What we do, the service we provide, is a scalable prospecting system, but we don't talk about that in our emails. We talk about how we we fill the pipeline with multi-million-dollar opportunities. That's the outcome of what we do, right? And if you're kind of in the audience here, questions like, I do this, and you want us to throw out an outcome for that, we'll take a stab. So feel free to chat that in. But to kind of paint this picture, Coop has been really hammering home with our internal team. this idea of something from Mario, and it's this. Coop, you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, I can try my best, but hopefully the picture can tell a good story, and I could try to annotate on your screen, but we know Mario is regular Mario, the plumber, can do whatever he needs to as regular Mario. And we know if Mario takes care of this and eats whatever the wildflower, he has a superpower. This is the outcome. So we're not saying, hey, come buy this product, come buy this product, come buy this product. We're saying, if you use our product similar to XYZ companies who you probably can relate to, then you too can, shoot flames out of your mouth. And you're trying to sell the outcome. You're trying to provide the credibility of companies that are similar to you in your target market. You wouldn't maybe put a link private equity like case study when we're trying to go after healthcare providers. It doesn't really relate. It doesn't really match up. So you have to make sure things are not only compelling and outcome focused, but you have to be relatable too. For it to all to really make sense, to have that comfort and trust and willingness to say, I see myself in a similar shoe and I want to be Mario too, that shoots fireballs out of his mouth. So hopefully that's a fun picture that, can help you grasp the concept, and feel free to share that with your friends and your peers in your working network.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, hopefully this helps paint a really good picture. If you didn't play Mario back, when I guess like early 2000s, the 90s, so this reference might not make sense, and so I'm sorry. But by and large, I feel like this generally can be appreciated, and it paints a really good picture. So thanks, Coop.
Yep.
The next thing that you're going to want to really think through is credibility. Another like the sociology or social psych principle for this is called social proof. Social proof is huge, and it's what I remember reading. I studied strategic communication in grad school. Really small data point here, and I read a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini. It is a phenomenal book. Highly recommend that everyone here reads that. But he talks about this principle that really opened up this door for me, that got me into the world of marketing and really interested in it more so than I'd ever been before. And social proof is, everyone here probably has heard of the acronym FOMO, for example, fear of missing out. Well, you want to create that kind of FOMO for your clients or your prospects, right? Where it's okay, if Coop is working with companies like Texas Instruments, Ryko, Pfizer, Kawasaki, and so forth, I'm just like them. Well, if they're using Coop and his services, I want to use them too, right? Because I don't want to be missing out on what my competitors are doing. I want to have the competitive edge over them. So this creates social proof, which drives that FOMO feeling and also establishes credibility, right? It allows you to say, I have done good work, so much so that these clients will let me use their name as a almost like a keystone of the quality of the kinds of clients that I work with. Mm-hmm. And you might think, Max, I don't have clients yet. That's okay. There are other ways around this to establish credibility. You can pull from credible sources. I see people saying, I was on a demo this morning, someone was pitching towards me, and he used 3 stats from 3 different companies. He said, according to McKinsey, 70% of companies are not hitting their strategic initiatives. According to Forrester, 77% of companies are not doing X. According to Gainsight, churns are increasing by X%. And it just creates this very stable, this is what people that are respected in the market say about XYZ service and how we're going to fit in with that. So credibility is huge. And even if you're typing a regular message to someone one-on-one, hey, would love to connect, we're doing XYZ, or I know that Forrester says this. I don't know if this is an initiative for you, but would love to see if we can help in some way, right? Or another CTA, which we're going to talk about in a second, could be, it's just part of your strategic initiatives for this year, right? Coop, thoughts?
No, you're doing wonderful.
Great. So now CTAs. This is call to action. This is really key. So sorry, I've got an extra bullet point here that's going to bother me, but now that you're all aware of it too, I'm so sorry. Anyway, Different clients care about different CTAs. And to Coop's original point here at the beginning, we're not trying to, hey, will you sign this contract? We're just trying to have a conversation. A CTA that we commonly use as like a starting point with our clients is, do you have 10 minutes for a quick intro call? And we recommend a specific time. How's Thursday at 2? How's Wednesday at 4? Whatever it might be. And people, it does not cease to amaze me. I will get a response of like, this would be the response. Max, I can't do that time. How's Friday at 11? I'm like, what happened? And it's like, they're responding to outreach that was automated for me. And so I need to respond back in such a way that feels like it came from that, like, yep, 11 o'clock works, just sending over the calendar invite now, looking forward to it. And so people will respond naturally to this calendar request or this time request. Other clients, their call to action is like they're in the world of finance or business funding. They are doing a high volume of conversations with clients. They care less about talking on the front end and more about getting a deeper understanding of their financial situation before having that conversation. So they'll say, as a call to action, hey, if this is interesting to you, here's a link to complete an application. It won't affect your credit score at all. Let me know if you have any trouble. That could be another example of a CTA if you have a more transactional approach. And then from there, other clients are like doing a more slow enterprise style sales cycle where it's like opposed to learning more, open to sharing thoughts, and that's their only CTA, and are able to get more conversations from that. They might not get as many like interested people to meet right now, but they can leverage that in the future for more conversations, and it feels natural and organic for their sales process. Yep. So yeah, this is a simple one. I recommend when you are A/B testing things, CTAs are really easy to A/B test. We're currently in the process right now of creating a few different frameworks for generating new CTAs for our clients. So there's that. So that's kind of the 5 pieces, right? Your tone, your audience, your outcomes, your credibility, your calls to action are all crucial components of actually building out effective messaging. Yeah. Want to plug real quick. I'm out next week, but we still have 3 more webinars in this series. And so bringing in more folks on the team, like we got Coop today. Next week, our CEO, Patrick Baines, will be leading how to source high quality prospects based on your ICP. I've been plugging that one like crazy. He is so good at developing ICPs and go-to-market strategies. You're not going to want to miss next week. And then, of course, I'll be back for the final 2. So would love to have you all here. Oh. Okay, let's talk touch points and timing. And all of these will look a little bit different here. I think it is relatively simple as a framework, which of course I'm saying it's simple. If you've never done this before, maybe it's not so simple. But the idea here is you want this to feel natural or intentional for your audience, right? What you might do for warm timing and cold timing might be completely different, right? Coop, I'm going to need to talk about multi-channel engagement here in a second, but I'll talk on like warm versus cold. So the way that we typically do warm messaging for our clients is direct with a call to action. Hey, do you have time to meet this week or next? Or do you have time to meet this Thursday at 3:30? I'd love to catch up and see how you're doing. And we might only do 2 or 3 touch points for that. Because if I know you, you're much more likely to respond. I don't want to annoy you and burn the relationship, right? So the second or third email, I'd be like, hey, I know this is a busy time. No sweat if you're too busy. Just let me know either way. Cold messaging might be a little bit more, I'll use a strong word, aggressive, where there's more touch points in the cadence. We're trying to create value along the way, provide a free this, information on that, trends in the market, or just more outcomes that they can imagine themselves having. And those might take 4 to 6 touch points to get someone on the line. We typically find the longer the cadence, the later or the more often someone is likely to book time. So what I mean by that is like people are much more likely to book time or respond in messages 3, 4, and 5, for example, than they are in messages 1 or 2. So if you're only doing one particular touch point, you might need to build out more, especially if it's a cold audience. Coop, I saw you put an image in the chat. Is that part of that? Well, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
are we going to just ask the audience as we get into, the campaign process and all the different touch points, maybe on average, how many touch points you have with your current outreach as you're trying to garner new business, new opportunities? So I'll just pause for a second and you let me know like how many touch points maybe you are currently using right now. And if you're starting to have a formula, because it's important to be artistic and creative with this type of outreach, but it's also as equally important to be scientific. So you have to create that routine, that habit, that discipline of knowing what you're doing consistently over the course of a month or maybe a quarter. And that way you can look back and say, this was the type of audience we went after. This was our value prop and our outcome. This was the sequence. These are the ways I try to make phone calls or leave voicemails or connect on LinkedIn. Maybe you're incorporating something like retargeting ads if you're doing something with paid advertising, using a pixel of some sort. So if there's anyone on the panel out of the attendees, how many touch points do you think it takes to try to get a response, or how many touch points are you currently baking into your outreach and your prospecting? It's all right if no one answers, but I will say in many cases, we find that partners and clients, they have they try for like one email and hope that it works. And if it doesn't, they feel like it's a failure. And it's not, it's a learning, it's a lesson. And we consistently are evolving the way that you are doing your follow through. Sometimes it needs to be ultra aggressive. Sometimes it needs to be a little bit more passive. But my point in showing this is like, these are frameworks that we're trying to provide to you, and you will have to augment it based on what your success is and where you get your learnings and your lessons. Here, we really do probably recommend at least 10 touch points, and it's not just through emails. Emails are the core sales and marketing activity that we can automate, right? We can automate that. Instead of doing it one by one and sending 50 unique emails every day and spending 8 hours doing that, we can let that happen in the background while you can go and identify who's most engaged using the NerdWise platform and make those dedicated phone calls, leave those voicemails that maybe bring to action and awareness to, hey, I'm calling because I sent you an email recently. I want to make sure you got it. I'm calling now because XYZ. If I don't hear from you by Thursday at 2, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to connect with you on LinkedIn. I'm going to send you a follow-up email. And I might even shoot you a text message just to see if that's an easier way to communicate. And if I don't hear back from you by Thursday at 2, I'm going to call you again. And if you run that cycle again consistently, I promise you, you will learn whether people are going to respond or not. And it's going to be a good thing that you can take home with you and learn from and share across your organization.
Yeah. One thing I'll add to this too, big surprise coming. I'm going to share another book reference. So if you know me, I'm a big fan of Chris Voss. He was like at one point in time, the lead negotiator for the FBI. Has a phenomenal book called Never Split the Difference. You may be familiar with it. And he talks about in email and negotiating, think of it like a chess game. You don't make all your moves in chess all at once. You make them one by one by one. And I think a lot of us feel this pressure to put all the value up front and have like no moves afterwards. But if you leverage this process, I'm going to have multiple touch points across these 3 or 4 channels. It could be phone, text, LinkedIn, email. Great. Now I know at this point, I'm going to offer this value. I'm going to make my next move here. I'm going to offer this other thing here. I'm going to plug this discount later on. And this allows for you to make more moves. And I think like my point of view is on it, it feels really intentional. It feels like, if you cadence it in such a way where it's not like several times a day for 3 days, and it's just like, okay, you can leave me alone now. We don't really recommend that. But if it's over the course of several days, people are like, okay, homegirl over here really wants to talk to me. Great. Maybe now I'll give them the time of day, or at least I know that they're trying, right? So I think that helps in the long run and kind of sparsing out your moves on the chessboard, so to speak. Moving on from there, like, okay, Coop, I might lean on you a little bit more on this in terms of like testing and optimizing your campaign. So you having some better writing chops than me. But in any case, there is a need to test over time. We're finding for a lot of our clients, what worked last year or the year prior, like the go-go days where like getting a loan was cheap and everyone was spending like crazy. Those offers worked great then. Maybe they don't work now. Now, granted, that's a long period of time, but are you testing and watching what's happening in the market? Being able to have a scalable and repeatable process where you can plug in different offers or different copywriting can actually help deliver better results over time because you're seeing what's really working. I'd be curious, Coop, when you're testing different copy, like what do you look for and what do you know to adjust over time?
So instead of just diving into the copywriting, which is important, once you know you have a pretty bulletproof go-to-market strategy, you have a very qualified list to go after. The two things I'm looking for initially are, is my subject line getting open rates? So even before getting to the copywriting in the heart of the email, are people even thinking or willing and being compelled enough to want to actually open your emails? No point. You could have the best email sequence in the world, but if people aren't opening it because your subject line is terrible, it doesn't matter. So go to market, very targeted, qualified list, then it's subject line. We try to shoot for, and we achieve this in many instances, probably a majority, for 50% and above open rates. Like that's the first indicator. If we're doing that at a small volume, we can ramp that up and scale that up and increase your outreach. And that's really an exciting time because then the next layer becomes, are you getting the right types of attribution and or are you getting the right types of responses? Or when you do follow with people, are they aware of who you are and what you do? And they recognize like, hey, yeah, Max, I've seen you try to reach out a couple of times. I'm sorry, I've been busy. So before we even get into the heart of the messaging, it's really about those first three core principles, which are effective go-to-market, target list, and your subject line. And when it comes to testing it all, I will be honest, I don't care how creative you are or how creative we need to be. I take emotion out of it. It's all performance-based. So whatever the results are, whether it's open rates and response rates or click-through rates, depending on what it is your goal and your outcome is that you want to achieve, take the emotion out of it. Numbers don't lie. And if you can't measure it, then it probably doesn't matter. So do things that matter, because if you measure them, you'll be able to look back and say, last quarter, we did really, really well. We went after this audience with this subject line, with this messaging, and we had these outcomes. Or it could be the other. It's like we did all those things we thought were right, and we learned that maybe we missed our mark. What can we do to adapt and adjust and modify? And I wouldn't overhaul the system completely because there's probably some valuable stuff you've already done in that preparation. Make small changes. If that's that'd be my recommendation. Don't do crazy split tests and have like 6 or 7 in a row or all at once. Maybe just measure and change one thing, whether it's the subject line or the credibility or the value prop or the call to action. Small bite-sized tests will lead you to understand where you can have bigger opportunities.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And I think in terms of like sample size for recommendations and like, okay, I want to test something new. I think to Coop's point, like let's start small. It can be, unless you're, really good at data analysis, and you might be, and if you are, that's phenomenal. You can go crazy here, right? I think the majority of us have other better skill sets than data analysis. And so starting small with different sample sizes of A/B testing things, if you've got 1,000 people, maybe test a sample size of 200 to 300 people for the next version, especially if you already have something that's working, and slowly start tracking over time what's working before you just flip a big switch. We had, I'll not share that story, but in any case, don't make big changes. That sometimes they can work, but when you if you were, I'm not a betting man, but if I were, and you are, or you might be, right? You go to the casino, you don't put all your chips in on one hand. You're going to spread it out over time. So I would think about it in those kinds of terms and how to optimize it over time and what to look for.
Yeah. And one thing in addition is Some of our clients have smaller markets, which means their total addressable market might only have 1,000 contacts. And that's not a majority of our clients, but we do have people that are limited based on geography and where they can service and where they can create relationships. Just because if you did a small sample split test with 100 or 200 people, those contacts are not wasted. You can remarket to them. You might want to wait 30 or 60 days or wait 3 months or a year, whatever it is. Those opportunities and those contacts are still valid unless they say, take me off your list, unsubscribe, or they respond in some manner. So I don't want anyone to ever feel as if they are discouraged and like, oh, I've only got so many contacts in my network. You can absolutely remarket to them. And maybe it's just a matter of thinking or creating something different to compel them to want to engage. So unless something's happened where they've left the company or they've already said no or take me off your list, those contacts should be recycled. They should be remarketed to. They should be put into some type of like nurturing sequence. And you got to figure out how to do that, obviously, and when's maybe the best time. And that's just part of being, proactive and trying to figure things out. There's no one size fits all.
That's great. I'm glad you added that, Coop. So in terms of like measuring success, I think there are a few ways to do this. Some of our clients have specific goals in mind and that we need to kind of measure against. I want to see X number of leads. I want to see X number of responses, X number of meetings booked. And so we'll measure to that. I mean, that's how we know how we're doing. Other clients, they're kind of dipping their toe in this. Maybe they've never done outbound before. Maybe you haven't either. And so these are kind of the ways to track your success. And these are like kind of key performance indicators around how's my messaging doing? So to Coop's point, your open rate has a big arrow towards your subject line and your audience, right? But let's say you've got really strong open rates. You're in like the 60, 70 plus open rate. Maybe your response rate is under 2%. So that tells you you're going after maybe the right people or you've got the right subject line, but maybe your offer or the way that your email is coming through is very different, right? So it's generating a lower response rate. Or maybe you're getting a high response rate, but they're not getting enough meetings booked. So maybe it's something where it needs to adjust your offer in such a way that people are like, this is attractive, I need this now, or this is attractive, I want to learn more. That can drive more meetings booked. So it really depends on what stage you're in kind of this process. Yeah. Coop, I believe this is my last slide in this deck for like content. Any final thoughts on this?
Well, I just want to ask the audience, is there any questions that have been, inspired by this conversation? Any thoughts you would like to share? Any success stories that are worth, bringing to the group? Or if anyone has like a sample messaging that you want us to try to work on the fly, like happy to do that. So any thoughts, questions, ideas, maybe concerns? Or any types of sample messaging that people want us to take a stab at here on the fly?
Honestly, I would be really intrigued to see. I know we've got a few folks that have been here a couple of times that have continued to return. Would love to know what questions you have here. Coop has been doing this a lot longer than I have. Maybe the content of this is so good that I've got all the tips I need, but I'm going to imagine there's probably a few questions here. So please go ahead and throw them in the chat. And if you do have sample messaging you want us to look at, let us know. We're happy to do it on the fly right now and try to do some really quick work there and see if we can help with your outbound outreach. So yeah, throw those in if you'd like. Yeah.
Yeah. And even if you can't find it now, if you want to send it to us one by one or one-to-one, we're happy to look at it. I mean, we're here to help. That's our goal. Most of the companies we work with, they know that this is an important way to operate their sales outreach and their prospecting to be more effective. They just don't know how to put the pieces together. And even if you're not working with us as a partner or vendor, I promise you, we're still going to give you help. We can still show you how to go about this. And in the near future, we'll have some pretty exciting stuff coming where maybe you'll be able to even do this on your own. We'll see.
That's great. Well, if you guys are typing, it's great. If there are no questions, all good. But I've got the chat open up on my other screen here, so I'll see it if it comes through. In any case, we'll keep going. If you're really wondering what to do next, so for example, if I were seeing this before working at NerdWise, I would be asking every single one of these questions. like, I have no idea how to do copywriting. I don't know where to start. Where's the cheat code? We'd be happy to help with that. Feel free to ask us any questions. If you want to bring us in to help run this for you, or if we can just consult in any way, we do this all day long. We'd be happy to chop it up with you guys, and really kind of dive in. So you can email us. I'm Max at Nerdwise. Coop is Coop, COUPE at nerdwise.com. You can email us or connect with us on LinkedIn. We'd be happy to help in any way. And with that, that is what we have for today. So if there are no other questions, feel free to go ahead and depart. We really appreciate everyone joining us here. We try to keep these to like 40 minutes or so. So thank you very much for joining us. It's been fun kind of diving in on all this. Feel free to stay on if you have questions, but otherwise, thanks guys. It's great.
Nice job, Max.
Cool. Well, you know what, Coop, any final thoughts while people still hang out?
Be excited for next week. You know, there's always plenty of learnings on these webinar series. And if there's certain topics or ideas that you feel that we can provide for you and your network or people that are similar to you, let us know. Honestly, some of the best feedback we get is from our clients and from our prospects, and it helps us to learn and grow. So selfishly, I like to just see what you guys have in your mind on where you're struggling, where you're succeeding, and where maybe someone like Nerdwise as a marketing partner can help you out.
Yeah.
We don't work together. We're still here to help.
That's great. Well, everyone, this is wonderful. Let us know how it can be of best use to you. Otherwise, we will see you next week with Patrick Baines leading the charge here. And thanks again for joining us. It's always fun. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.